Hi, everybody. Welcome.
Hi.
It's Kelly and Arthur with the Lupshas. How is everyone today?
We are back.
Thanks for joining us with our podcast, Becoming the CEO of Your Health. Don't we all want that? Fantastic. So, hey, I hope you guys have all been doing great out there. We have a topic that's near and dear to our heart. I feel like we have so many that are, right?
We do. I mean, we have a lot of, when it comes to becoming the CEO of your own health, right? I mean, this is all really important to all of us.
Yeah, we are passionate about this, and I hope you feel it. If you don't, I don't know, like pause and come back to us.
Yeah, go run around the block real quick or something. Do some jumping jacks. Get excited and then come back.
All right, today we are talking about concussion. Now, yes, because of our background of stroke and traumatic brain injury and concussion as physical therapists, it's our jam, and we're really, really passionate about the prevention and what to do after.
And the fact that we're parents to 4 children and we've had 2 kids with concussions, that also kind of made us kind of passionate about it.
100%. And honestly, I never knew how prevalent it was.
No.
And I also never knew that most people aren't getting help.
Yeah. And in fact, most people don't even really realize what a concussion is, Kelly. I mean, you know, the old adage of, oh, you kind of had your bell rung. Oh, you're a little woozy, right? You know, just go lay down for 24 hours in a dark room and you'll be fine.
Rest, sleep it off.
Yeah, no, that's not. This is a serious issue.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, an awful lot of people out there end up in that classification that I would describe as the walking wounded. You know, they've had a traumatic brain injury. Concussion is a traumatic brain injury, and they have long-term ramifications. It's not the people who got better in that 24 hours. They have long-term effects of this, and it really can mess up their lives.
Absolutely, you guys. So, hey, listen, you might say like, oh my God, I've had a concussion, or somebody in my family had a concussion, or your neighbor had a concussion, right? I mean, I would probably think you know someone in your life that has had a concussion because it's very, very prevalent. And those of you out there like, oh, I don't play sports. My kids aren't in contact sports. Well, I want to tell you that that's just a percentage of people that have concussion. Right. Most people, it's like they, you know, stood up and they hit their head on a counter.
Got in a car accident.
They got in a car accident. I've had people like
stumbled and fell.
Fall off a horse, stumble and fall. So it's something that is just in everyday life.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, it's just an accident by something that had happened.
Yeah, in fact, Kelly, the statistics are showing that it's somewhere between 1.6 and 3.8 million concussions happen every year right here in the U.S.
Wow. And I have been part of some concussion groups, and I know that there's a lot of people out there that are still suffering.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, everyone told me I thought this was a temporary thing and I would just get better, but I'm really still suffering. And so that's why Arthur and I want to bring you guys. We're going to talk a little bit about what is concussion, you know, what's really happening in your brain, because it's kind of like silent. You look fine.
Yeah. So speaking of those numbers for a second, Kelly, yes, there's between 1.5 and almost 4 million concussions occurring in the U.S. every year. And as we said, there's lots of causes, right? Mm-hmm. Whether it's car accidents, whether it's falls, whether it's you run into something, and sports. Of course, we all think sports, but actually sports only account for about 300,000 of those concussions.
Wow.
Now, interestingly, in the sports world, you know, so many people are more concerned, right, about football and, you know, contact sports. And obviously, we think of boys being perhaps more involved in some of those than girls, but actually there is a much higher prevalence of concussion in high school and collegiate girls than boys. Okay?
Pretty wild, right? I mean, think about soccer, even volleyball, lacrosse.
Yeah. And what's interesting is not only are girls almost 4 times more likely to have a concussion than boys in high school and college, but they can take on average twice as long to recover from it.
Oh my gosh. Are you guys hearing this?
Yeah.
Right?
So don't just think your daughter's being moody, right? Just don't think it's, hormonal or anything like that. If they've had a knock to the head, there could be some real big issues going on. And we're going to talk about the physical, mental, and emotional symptoms that can be long lasting with concussion during this talk.
Yes. And I do want to just mention the fact that, of course, probably when people think of concussion, the number one sport related they think is football, right? Was that going through your head?
Maybe.
sure for
Yeah.
most people, it's like football.
Football,
The big movie
hockey,
Concussion
yeah.
came out, brought a lot of attention. And a lot of the people out there in the professional world are now stepping forward, talking about this and what we can do for prevention. And yes, there's equipment, and that's fantastic that the technology is leading better and better and better.
Mm-hmm.
But we're going to talk about, again, first and foremost, if you have had one, what's happening in your brain and what you can do. But there's a lot you can do to actually help keep the health of your brain optimal. So should you hit your head, should your kid get concussed in a sport, their brain is the most protective possible.
Yeah, so either they won't have a concussion even though they had a trauma, or they'll at least be able to recover faster from it.
Yeah.
Right?
So you guys, let's start out like, hey, what's a concussion? So if some of you are like, I don't even understand what even is a concussion, Arthur, why don't you start and talk about like, what is that?
Yeah, that's a great question, Kelly. And let's be really, really clear, guys. A concussion is a form of traumatic brain injury. Okay, now how can it occur? As we said, it can occur from contact, where you actually hit your head against something or something hits your head. That is one way to bruise the brain, literally bruise the brain, causing a traumatic brain injury and having a concussion. And a concussion is diagnosed really by the group of symptoms that come along with it. Now, another way to actually end up with a concussion is instead of striking your head directly, you strike your body in such a way that your brain is rattling around inside your skull, because as your neck can whip forward and back, there's a little delay as your brain then moves forward and back.
Slosh.
Yeah, exactly. And
Honestly.
it can hit the sides of your skull, the front and the back, or side to side. And that's what creates what we call a coup contre coup. That's the medical term for it. But it is also a way to bruise and damage the brain and create a concussion. And these are really the big mechanisms of injury, right? Either as a mechanical force directly to the head, or a mechanical force to the body that creates this whiplash motion, and then the brain is moved and is striking the inside of the skull.
And in that, you guys, I want you to even think about any sort of high impact activity that your body might get moved hard, and as a result, the brain moves. So for instance, you could be skiing, fall, not hit your head, but your body at such force. It could be, I mean, we live here in Southern California, so hello, the mecca of roller coasters. We've had people in roller coasters actually from the forces end up with that brain having that coup contre
because your head slams from side to side, right? And the brain's shifting inside the skull.
Right. And maybe some of you have heard people talk about little children, and you hear of shaken baby syndrome. Ultimately, that's what's happening, is that little brain is moving around in there. And just so you guys know, the skull is made of your bones, is hard. But inside that, your brain is actually gelatinous. It's soft. So it's this soft thing that we hope that has some cushion around it. And it is made to take a little bit of natural forces of the body that do occur in daily activity. But you never know if it's just too much for the brain to handle, or the health of the brain, or the severity of the brain. And ultimately, just like you bump into something and you get a bruise on your leg. I know just the other day, I was like, where'd this bruise come from? But that happens to your head. Your brain gets an actual bruise on the brain. And
Right.
That's why it is an actual form of a brain injury.
And what we have to understand is that when there's that trauma to the tissue, there's all kinds of, healing responses that are going to be triggered with that. And the first and foremost and biggest one is the inflammatory response. And when there's inflammation in the tissues of the brain, there's all kinds of biochemical changes that are going on. And these things need to be addressed really, really fast.
Yes. And we're going to get into that a little bit. So we will do a little science for those of you that are like, what is going on in my brain? But, first and foremost, you guys, I definitely want to say, if you've had a concussion, have you felt misguided? Like maybe you've gone to the doctor and the doctor did give you some basic advice of, rest, stay out of work or school for maybe 2 or 3 days and decrease your stimulus, and then you'll be fine. And you still, whether it's weeks later, whether it's months later, or whether it's years later, you're like, I still have headaches. I'm still not sleeping well.
I can't focus and concentrate properly.
Exactly. Maybe you're gaining weight because your hormones have now been out of balance because
My
of what's
brain
going
just
on.
doesn't feel right.
Right. It's
You
you're just
know?
not yourself anymore. Even it could be your personality or
Yeah.
how you know are showing up every day, how productive you are in your work. So feeling misguided is really, really normal.
Yeah, and Kelly, I hope that people are really understanding us too. That again, we said this before, but the days of go to a dark, quiet room and rest for 2 or 3 days, and that's your treatment. That's old school. Okay, that's old medicine. That's not even good medicine anymore. And most doctors today are going to recognize and tell you, really that rest period should be no more than about 24 hours. And then after that, we need to start increasing activity and literally start giving the brain gentle exercise. Okay, because that's going to stimulate that healing process and recovery again.
Yes. And at the end, we're going to recap with some steps that we would suggest you guys taking. And that's going to be part of it. The more you are in tune and listen to what your body is saying,
Mhm.
when you do start returning back to work, to school, to play, to sport, to whatever, you have to be gentle with yourself. And if your body is having increased headaches or vision, or you don't feel like yourself, or you're vomiting, or I mean, the sky's the limit as far
When
as
you're
the
saying
spectrum.
increasing vision, you mean increasing visual difficulties.
Difficulty.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Some blurriness or cloudiness. Then your
Double
body's
vision.
telling you, like, it's too much. I can't quite handle this yet.
Yeah.
It's too much. Maybe loud noise, things like that. Again, we're going to talk about. But I just want you to understand in this whole process that you need to be gentle to yourself. You need to speak up about what's going on. It won't actually just go away. And it is normal to feel kind of a little bit misguided or stuck or anxious because you're not getting better. And that's why we're bringing this to you, so that we can give you information to help you move forward in this process should you have had a concussion down the line. So let's talk about 3 categories of some actual symptoms that we call post-concussion syndrome. And that's where people are like, oh yeah, you had a concussion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Arthur, you want to share a little bit?
Yeah. So the first group are those physical symptoms, guys, right?
That's the most obvious, right?
The most obvious, where you're having headaches, right? You're like having these chronic, intense, really, almost migraine type headaches. Maybe you're having dizziness. In very severe case, you may be having nausea, or you may be vomiting. And honestly, if you're at that point where you're throwing up, that's a trip to the emergency room. Don't mess around with that. It's a 911 call, or get someone to take you and you go right to the emergency room. Maybe you've got some fuzziness or blurring vision. You could have possibly ringing the ears. Maybe you're light sensitive and you just can't take bright lights, especially for fluorescent lights.
Or sound, right?
Yeah, or loud sounds. Exactly, Kelly. You might be having some changes or loss of smell or taste. That's not necessarily COVID, okay?
Right.
Just because you've got a concussion doesn't mean you also have
all those
COVID.
senses we're
Right.
talking about.
Maybe balance problems, some changes in your walking, what we call gait disturbances. You may just be feeling tired,
Very common.
physically fatigued. That's, as Kelly said, absolutely common. And all of these things are what we really would describe under the physical symptoms. The one other thing that I would actually also put in there under physical symptoms would be changes in sleep. And whether it's you want to sleep all the time, whether it's you can't fall asleep, either one of those extremes, something that's out of your norm could be an indication that you had a concussion.
Definitely, definitely. The second area of symptoms that you want to talk about is mental symptoms. And again, these are things that could be exacerbated or mild, again, any degree. And the first is really just like brain fog. You feel like, why can't I think clear? Why do I feel a little confused? Things are just a little bit off. I'm having a harder time thinking at work than I normally should. Or maybe it's just slowed down, like your reaction time or being able to complete a task. It's taking you longer. It's like, why is it taking me 30 minutes? I should be able to get this done in like 10. So knowing that, problems with concentration, memory loss, very, very normal. And then maybe just remembering even new information. Sometimes it's like, oh, somebody told me that yesterday. I'm not sure. I didn't quite remember that. And then overall, just kind of scatterbrained. Again, this isn't just like overwhelm of life. This is like more than normal, right? This is talking about your atypical for you, knowing who you are, or just overall mental fatigue. Just like Arthur talked about physical fatigue, it's mental fatigue, brain fatigue. All fits in these mental symptoms.
And guys, what you also need to realize is that if the concussion has occurred to you, you might not even be aware
Mm-hmm.
of some of these
Good
mental
point.
symptoms, but it could be that your loved one, your spouse, your parents, coworkers, they're the ones noticing that you're not staying on task like you used to, or that you're not remembering things. So, as the people around the person who had the concussion, we also need to be aware of these mental systems. So we can mental symptoms, not systems, symptoms, so that we can, supervise and keep an eye out and recognize when something is really going wrong.
Yeah. Good point.
Yeah. And then the third area we want to really talk about in that post-concussion syndrome category are emotional symptoms. It could be, increased irritability. Maybe you're feeling really sad. You can't really explain why. Maybe you just like emotions are all over the place, really labile. You can be really up one moment, really down the next, and your responses are just not appropriate for the situation. Unusually nervous or anxious, or suddenly really down and depressed. Again, we're looking for things that are out of the norm, right? Big changes from someone's usual behavior.
Yes. And you might have one in this category, one in that category, some in all three, or maybe just one category. You don't have all three.
Yeah.
But and this is another reason that, even if you go to the hospital and the hospital does an MRI or a CT, chances are they may not see anything.
Yeah.
Because if they do, then they're going to say you actually had a traumatic brain injury and potentially, I can't say take you more serious, but because they see something and they can diagnose it specifically then on the spot, they may keep you, they may do more tests, they may really start working with you, treating you differently. But most people tell me, Kelly, I had an MRI and it showed nothing.
Didn't show anything.
Okay. So what I want to share with you guys is people say, well, what's going on in my head? What really is happening in the brain? So this is a little more complicated. So for those of you that want to know, okay, hang with me. And those of you that don't, we're just going to talk about this for a few minutes.
Hang out and we'll be right back with you.
You might find it interesting though. You might find it really interesting of honestly what's going on in your brain, because the brain is amazing. If you think about it, it's this organ that can make us think, feel, move, create, learn, grow. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, I mean, the human brain and what it allows us to do is unique. I mean, we've yet to build a supercomputer that can actually perform the sort of computations that our own brains can.
Mm-hmm. Arthur and I joke, and it's not a joke, that you now today can, replace any joint in the body. You can have open heart surgery, lung surgery.
I mean, transplants, right? You can have
transplants,
heart, lung, kidney, liver transplants. You can replace every single part of the body today, except
the brain.
The brain.
The brain.
Yeah, we can't.
It's
There's no brain transplants. Not yet.
Guys, take care of your brain.
Yeah.
So in the brain, let me give you this example. You have all these brain cells, okay? Within your brain cells, you also have brain regions, different areas of the brain. And people talk about, oh, this is related to speech, or this might be more related to motor control. But within those, you also have neural networks. And these networks are these little groups or clusters that talk to each other and they communicate to each other. And what can easily happen is that communication between these neural networks gets broken down. It's like the highway just, has construction on it and those signals can't find their way. And it all begins with itty bitty, teeny, tiny brain cells. I mean, Arthur and I have been studying all about atoms and breaking down the atom even smaller. So we're talking about tiny things. So if you imagine one brain cell, the width of one brain cell, okay, is about the width of a piece of dust. I mean, we don't even see dust till it's like a clump of dust. So it's very, very difficult. And all of these areas, like one cell itself might connect with 10,000 other cells.
Wow.
So imagine that highway, these neural networks get disturbed and that one cell can't go out and communicate. Well, no wonder why people have all these symptoms of dizziness, fogginess, brain fog. I can't remember. I'm feeling out of balance.
Yeah, that's a huge interruption, right? I mean, you lose one connection to 10,000 more. That's inconceivable. I mean, it's conceivable, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So these neural networks, you guys, they're actually kind of like the star of the show. We don't really talk about this very often, even in science, but the connection of them talking to one another, that's how we're able to feel, grow, create, learn, do all of these things. And so when Arthur talked about brain inflammation, just like anything, right? You sprain your knee, you sprain your ankle, you get inflammation. That's a normal process for healing.
Yeah.
But when that inflammation goes unchecked or unresolved and it lingers in the brain, okay, it's your glial cells, you get glial inflammation, that slows down, that puts pressure on all those neural networks, all the communication of those cells. So now it's like, well, of course it's slower or it's not finding the right way. There's inflammation that's clogging it up, that's interrupting this. And the other thing that we see really, really important is because of the physical trauma, it actually leads to chemical trauma. And this chemical trauma gives a cascade. So the normal chemicals, the neurotransmitters that are going along now are either not being sent or being oversent. And sometimes some of these neurotransmitters that are being sent are actually too excitatory or they're inhibitory, and they can actually kill off some of your brain cells. So looking at rebalancing those chemicals inside the brain for the brain to function, and in a minute, we're going to talk about the communication of these neurotransmitters that are going, you guys, from the gut to your brain. And this is it's no lie. When you know, everyone out there is talking about the gut as the second brain. There's more neurochemicals that are being sent from your gut. Neurotransmitters from your gut to your brain than even your brain sending messages to your gut. Wild. So we're going to have to critically take care of the gut. And if too much of certain things are sent and your cells start dying, well, then that's really bad news. I mean, that's ultimately where people can end up with brain injury when there's actually, death to the cells, neuronal death. And so I'm not going to get into all the chemicals and all the hormones. I just want you to understand that there's a huge chain of reactions that are creating this neurotoxicity inside the brain. You can't see it. The MRI is not going to pick it up, but we know it's happening. Science now knows. And so Arthur and I want to give you guys tips on really some of these obstacles.
Yeah, and truly, we need to slow down that cascade as quickly as possible, bring it to a halt, and then the healing can really start occurring. And the faster we decrease that inflammation, the faster we decrease stop this cascade of events from occurring, the better the outcome. The better the outcome.
So let me give you guys some obstacles to healing, and then we're going to leave you with our tips to healing and recovery. Yeah. So we just talked about brain inflammation. That's a big deal. The next one is really unmanaged mental and emotional stress that now is on top of all of this that's happening. Digestive imbalances, very big. Blood sugar imbalances. Sensitivity to your mitochondria. If you guys remember all the way back to maybe like 8th grade, freshman year in high school, biology, talking about mitochondria, ATP, they create energy.
Powerhouse of the cell, little organelle, right?
So some of these neurochemicals that are going on actually start damaging the mitochondria. So if you're feeling, they're very fragile.
Very fragile. So they're damaged easily. And what's crazy is they don't repair easily. So, we don't want to damage them, and then we need to take the right steps to repair them if they need to be.
Yep.
Which we all need, actually.
We
actually all need it.
Looking for food sensitivities, hormone imbalances, joint and muscular imbalances that have happened because of all of this. Toxins. We can now your body can produce toxins. There can be polymorphisms. There can be untreated autoimmune and all sorts of other hidden infections and it can create an autoimmune response, can cascade. And that even becomes this bigger, difficult component. And it's why being treated early, right, babe? I mean, early, you guys. Don't just say, well, we'll wait. I think my kid's okay. I think my spouse is okay. No. You need to start doing things right away. So are you guys ready for some tips? Get a piece of paper and a pen, because these are things you want to know, and we will link. And if anybody wants to actually get a cheat sheet, we can make sure that you get all this information. It is on our website as well. You can find us at ocneurorehab.com for our physical therapy clinic, or just general information on theluptious.com, but specifically for brain injury, go to ocneurorehab.com. But feel free to just reach out and we can give you these tips, because they are very, very important. In case you're driving right now or you're out running, that's where I do my podcast listening. You might not be able to stop and write this down.
Yeah, but guys, just to know, we talked about this inflammation. We have to stop this cascade of inflammatory events going on. And the very first step is actually with what you're putting in your face, right? The things going in your mouth, how you're providing that nutrition for your body is vital. And the first thing to do is actually cut out completely those inflammatory foods that are going to increase or add to that inflammatory process that's already started. So we're talking about eliminating sugar, especially processed sugar, right?
You guys, it leads to inflammation, the big baddie.
Big baddie, okay?
Sugar.
Gluten, big problem, okay?
Our
dairy.
bodies were not made to digest gluten. So even though some of us feel like we're fine and we don't feel like you're gluten intolerant, actually we all don't process it very well.
And along with gluten, actually there's a lot of wheat products, guys. I mean, wheat in general is something that our bodies aren't able to break down very well. Some people have no issue with it. A lot of people have a lot of wheat sensitivities. And if you're already in an inflamed state, cutting wheat out, cutting gluten out, getting rid of those simple sugars, highly processed foods, and dairy. Get them out of your diet. Honestly, a minimum 2 to 3 months, really is where you should be, but an absolutely minimum 3 weeks. Just absolutely no. Know that breakfast sets the tone of your day. You want to make sure that you're getting a diet that's high in good, healthy proteins and fats right from the beginning of your day to really set yourself off and support your neural system. And
we're not going to talk about, this is not about intermittent fasting today, but remember the word breakfast really is break fast. So that doesn't mean you need to eat breakfast, right, at 6 a.m. If you're somebody that already only eats at like noon, whatever that is, we're just saying the first foods you should eat to fuel your brain. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah. Other great things you can add in order to make sure you're getting those good fats into your system would be things like MCT oil. That stands for medium chain triglycerides. There's some great ones on the market. We happen to use one from
Dave
Asprey, his bulletproof MCT oil. Coconut oil is really, really wonderful too. And then, again, you've got to eliminate those other excitotoxins, any MSGs, hydrogenized vegetable proteins, yeast extract, aspartame, artificial sweeteners and colors, and other chemicals. Look, if you can't pronounce it, it doesn't belong in your face, okay? So just don't put them in the pie hole. Keep it all natural, good foods.
You guys have been hearing this for all sorts of things, right? But when it comes to your brain, don't just say, yeah, I've heard this, we should eliminate gluten, yeah. No, really take this seriously and eliminate this to the best of your ability for that minimum of 60 to 90 days to let your brain heal.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, after we really look at nutrition globally, now we really need to look at, okay, how deficient is our nutrition, right? Because let's face it, our foods are not as nutritious as they once were. The soil doesn't have the nutrient density that it once had. And so we don't get everything we truly need out of our foods. And you may need to supplement with really high quality supplements to truly prime your cells. You want to make sure we're healing our gut right. We want to make sure that we've got that brain-gut connection really working at its absolute optimal level. So we are really, really big, and we really encourage you to look at some activators, some products that can be activators. In particular, some pathways you want to activate are pathways such as the NRF2 pathway. We sometimes refer to it as NRF2, but that's not like Nerf gun or Nerf football. Okay, it's NRF and the number 2. And the NRF2 pathway is responsible for your genetic regulation. It can upregulate and downregulate up to 500 different genes in your bodies. And that includes things like your own antioxidant pathways, your own anti-inflammatory pathways, detoxification pathways. It can upregulate the really great antioxidant enzymes in our bodies like glutathione, catalase, SOD. Super, super important, and can really help not only decrease that brain inflammation after an injury, but can actually help provide a protective barrier prior to an injury. So that's super, super important.
Absolutely. And speaking of those activators, and we were talking about mitochondrial health, there are many things today to upregulate your mitochondrial health.
Yeah.
But another pathway in the body is our NRF1 pathway. And that was going to help you build bigger, stronger, more robust mitochondria, producing more energy. And if you've had mitochondria damage, it'll actually help you eliminate that damaged mitochondria because you don't want it hanging around.
Yeah, it can either help repair them, or it'll induce what they call autophagy, where the body's actually eliminating, getting rid of those bad ones.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, go ahead, Kelly.
And omegas.
Omega's huge.
I think everybody today is kind of taking them, but what Arthur and I realized, just like many things in life, that like all things are not equal, right?
Yeah.
So all omegas are not equal.
They're
so when
not
someone tells me, oh yeah, I just buy mine from Costco, and I'm thinking, oh my God, there's 300 in a bottle. They're sitting there for months. And who knows, before they even got to the shelf at Costco, how long they were sitting there and how they were processed.
And
so
then people
is
complain
that
of
fish
like
oil really
fish burps or, fishy taste. Look, guys.
If you're going to take something, you want to make sure you're taking what it really is, getting the benefit.
Right. I always, my analogy is, for those of you that like sushi out there, does sushi taste fishy?
No, not good.
Not good sushi, right? If it tastes fishy, you probably stop eating it. And please think of your omega fish oils in much the same way. Now, you can get omega oils from plant sources, and that's wonderful too. Sometimes they're not quite as rich as the fish sources, but there are some wonderful, wonderful, wonderful plant-sourced omegas out there as well.
Absolutely. You want to also be careful, or not be careful, but make sure you're adding, maybe supplementing some of your minerals. Okay. Magnesium is a really important mineral out there that's going to really be the body's master mineral, and selenium.
And zinc as well.
So check all of that. And then Arthur, what about nootropics? Because I would say as far as brain enhancement, that would be key too.
Now, especially when we're talking about concussion, right? Nootropics can be a wonderful, wonderful supplement. Nootropics are really activators and supplementation directly for brain health.
Like executive functioning. So you want to like better focus, concentration, clarity. And that's often what you're having difficulty with in these brain injuries.
Yeah. And recognize, guys, there's a big difference between a nootropic and an energy drink.
Right. We're not talking about going and get Monster
Don't stock
or Red
up on
Bull.
Rockstar, right?
Again, you may love those out there. I will tell you they're probably not the best for your body or your brain health. Especially
in the situation we're talking about.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So those things need to be gone.
Absolutely.
They're not going to help your focus and concentration in this situation. Yeah.
So Arthur, you were sharing about gut health, as I was saying, that relationship of the gut to the brain. But you guys, let's listen. What should we really be doing for that gut health?
Yeah, honestly, I did not understand truly the need for creating the right environment in the microbiome of the gut. And we have to make sure that we're seeding the gut with the right bacteria in order for the gut to heal and be the most efficient and effective possible in the processes that it's going to do for us. So having a good probiotic is vitally important. Again, as Kelly said earlier, they're not all equal. Okay, some are better than others. Really make sure you do a little bit of work and investigation to understand what you're taking and why. We have our biases. We're happy to share with that. If you want more information, feel free to reach out to us. But having a probiotic that can actually get into your gut and do its job and help heal the gut and produce the right environment for your gut to work the way it's supposed to, vital. Absolutely vital.
And just a simple analogy for those of you out there like, oh, gut health, whatever. I poop every day. What do I need a probiotic for? No, that's not it, you guys. Okay. I'm glad you poop every day.
That's
you should
wonderful.
poop at least once a day. Okay. But
good job. Well done.
But as Arthur was talking about, just imagine you're planting a garden. Okay. Yeah. And those probiotics are actually the seeds that you're planting. But before you even put those seeds in there, what do you do to the soil? Yeah, you turn it up, you eliminate weeds, you put in fertilizer.
Or good soil.
Good soil.
Extra nutrients.
Absolutely. So that's where this big buzz right now with prebiotics. There's all these prebiotic drinks out there on the market. Again, you do need the food to actually feed your probiotic. Right. So again, balance, you'll get even more benefit from your probiotic if you're having a prebiotic as well.
And a lot of people out there like to get their prebiotic sources from things like fermented fruits and vegetables, especially the vegetables, right? And getting some more fiber and things like that. Some people don't care for them. So, there are other ways to get it. Kombucha is not the only way, but, vitally important, Kelly. Absolutely.
Yep. Awesome. Sleep. Okay. Arthur mentioned this in the beginning. So yes, that first 24-hour period, having rest. And then after that, you really need to listen to your body and start having just periods of rest, some rest breaks built in. Then over time, of course, extend those periods. But honestly, as you're transitioning back to work, back to school, really about every 45 minutes or so, hour most, you should be getting up, walking around, taking just like 3 minutes, 5 minutes, a little mental break, let your brain just nothing. That doesn't mean go jump on your phone, you guys. Okay. That does not mean that. That means calm. Just breathe, walk, relax, reset your brain.
Yeah. And actually screen time can be a real problem. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But yeah, don't be jumping on your phone, scrolling through Facebook. That is not rest for your brain. Okay. Modalities. What can you do? What other adjuncts can you bring in to help facilitate this recovery process? Some treatment modalities that we really like and appreciate are things like infrared saunas. Going to have wonderful detoxification, anti-inflammatory benefits. Hyperbaric oxygen treatments, really increasing the oxygenation to the brain can help with that tissue healing as well. Okay. Red light therapy. That's another one that can be super, super helpful and important.
And some of these, you guys, you can actually buy them and have them in your houses or find centers that have them. We have them in our center that people can come and use. So what once was thought is they were unavailable, they're actually much more readily available today for people to find, use them in your communities or have them in your homes, whether it's just renting them or you can actually find some that aren't that expensive if you really just want to bring them inside your home itself so that you're one, more compliant with using it. And then it's just easier in your day to just add it to your routine.
Right. Absolutely.
So let's talk about noise. Probably so common. I would say very common symptom that people say that loud noises, it really bothers them. They can't tolerate that. So what I would suggest is actually have some earplugs and you might need to wear them all the time, especially in a noisy or loud environment or when there's multiple inputs happening. It is very helpful to decrease that stimulus of the brain through this healing process. So get them early on, use them when needed. That way you have them in your backpack, in your purse, whatever with you, and you can pop them in. But it's important. And it isn't like everyone doesn't get overstimulated. Sometimes you don't know you are until you're maybe having that headache pop back up again.
Right. And on the other end, especially with our kids, be careful because a lot of them want to keep their earbuds in or, have headphones on. And sometimes it can be sudden changes in decibel levels that suddenly come directly into the ears. That can be very, very disturbing for someone who's trying to recover from concussion. So actually, I would really recommend if they are listening to gentle music, it shouldn't be directly in their ears. A little more ambient, a little more out in the room with some speakers or things like that, and keep the volume down, and if they're starting to return to any computer time or things like that, again, not with earbuds or earphones.
Yep. Okay. And then the next one that kind of goes along with sound is vision, is light. Very important to just right off the bat, you can go on Amazon. There's many brands today that you can get of blue light blocking glasses. And for most of you that maybe wear glasses today, if you've gotten them in the last probably year, they're actually building in blue light filters right into people's glasses today. So you may already have them, but if you don't, here, Arthur, you want to go reach back. The second pair are mine. So I keep these near. So when I'm on a lot of screen, I just pop on my blue light blockers and I'm good to go. So these don't have a prescription in them. They just block out the screen, that bad blue light that we don't want throughout our day.
Yeah. And you may even want to be aware of the lighting you have throughout your house. Different types of light bulbs can emit much more blue light. You can actually go and find specific bulbs that are more in the red light frequencies, so that you're just not being bombarded by that blue light nonstop at home. Exercise. we said we don't want to be really having that period of rest for much more than about 24 hours. You need to start moving. Your body will crave movement, and begin with just gentle walks. I mean, we don't have to go out and like start running. We don't have to go hop on the bike and pedal for 45 minutes. Literally just a 2 to 5 minute walk, right? Just getting a little bit of movement, increasing your circulation, your blood flow throughout your body, get your breathing going, just a little bit, like 5% more than when you're laying down, right? Getting your heart beating a little bit harder, that gentle exercise, and then we're slowly going to work back up towards previous fitness levels. Now, that can be really frustrating for someone who was an athlete. And let's say, you know, they're a soccer player, a football player, and they bump their head, and you're telling them, oh, exercise, walking is exercise. Like, no, it's not. It is. It is. It's exercise from a physiological perspective. And remember, we're healing here.
Absolutely. And in this healing journey, I think I'll even speak from a rehab perspective is people always want big jumps, and insurance companies want big jumps. Oh, the person's doing this. Now they need to be this much better. Okay. Don't expect yourself to be this much better. Go from 0 to 50%. It's going from 0 to 1 to 2 to 5 to 7 to 10 to 12. Maybe you have a jump to 20, but you've got to give yourself time to slowly work back up. Because what we see too often, people go back to school to, you know, especially sport, too quick.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, everything comes back again. The headaches, the focus and concentration, that they just didn't give themselves enough time in that healing journey. And if that's the case, I mean, sometimes we don't know exactly. You have to listen to your body and back off.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So really, as Kelly's saying, mini breaks throughout your day, you know, can be from early on, just stopping what you're doing for just a minute or two. Okay, maybe you have to stop for a half hour and really rest and take a break. Or maybe, as Kelly said earlier, every 30, 45, 60 minutes, you're taking a minute or two off. But to give yourself those little breaks, some unstructured time, no social media, no TV, anything that requires too much straining mental focus, eye focus, hearing, any of that can just start bringing those symptoms back on. And literally, if those symptoms come back and you start having headaches, dizziness, any of the symptoms we talked about earlier, that kind of backs you up to step one again. Okay, so those mini breaks are important.
And then our last tip to help is implementing, if you don't already, to implement some sort of meditation or mindfulness practice in your day. This does not have to be an hour-long meditation. This can be 5 minutes, 10 minutes, maybe just once a day. If you can do it twice a day, great. But learning to clear the mind, learning to let things settle, learning to just be present in the moment. Our world is a busy, chaotic, highly stimulus place, more today than ever in history.
Yeah.
So yes, here we are today in a time of COVID that people have kind of come back to restoration and are learning to be a little bit more quiet and present and balanced. But this is very key for the brain to give it permission to heal.
Yeah, and really just shut off for a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And I don't really want to go big into meditation right now. We've talked about it before on other podcasts. I'm sure we will again in the future. But one of the things I didn't understand about meditation is it wasn't like I had to be like mentally quiet. You can allow your brain to wander a little bit. Just recognize you're wandering and go, oh, I'm going to let that thought go for now, and just kind of come back to a calm, quiet place.
For sure, for sure. So, hey, you guys, that was a lot, right? And we were like going crazy with those 10 tips to really help you.
Sorry.
And so if you want more information, please reach out. But
Absolutely.
This is just, when it happens to your own family, it becomes very, very near and dear. But knowing that there's long-term ramifications, and the few things that we'll end and really wrap up with, what we're starting to see is people that have had concussions that are really not being healed are having increased risk of anxiety and depression. This is like underlying what people don't know of CTE that's been recognized. And this can lead to horrible problems for people's life that, yes.
Yeah, and Kelly, I was going to say too, that once you've had one concussion, you are 4 times more likely to have a second concussion. Okay, so that repeated concussive event, that then can lead to CTE, that then can lead to Parkinsonisms or early
Early dementia.
Alzheimer's, early dementia, things like that. So, you know, it's bad enough to get one. The last thing we want is repeated concussions. And should you ever have one, just know these are some early things that you can do to start intervening, to start accelerating and facilitating that healing process. And please, as Kelly said, feel free to reach out. You know how to find us.
And I'm going to end with this. If you haven't had a concussion, fabulous. So guess what? It's your turn now to protect your brain.
Yep.
So everything we just talked about, you guys, is stuff you can implement into your day now, today.
Yep. Get started.
Those would be my suggestions. If you want to be the CEO of your own health,
take control.
Then it is your turn right now. Don't wait till tomorrow. Don't go, oh, I should have. Start today. So, hey, wherever you found us, thanks for listening. You might have found us on YouTube. You might be on our podcast. We super appreciate it. Share this with somebody that you love that might want to know. We really appreciate any 5-star rating. That really helps boost us and share and spread this information with more people around the world. It's been our absolute pleasure. And until next time.
Thank you, guys. Love you all. We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.